All right, hello everyone. This is Destiny Quartet, and this will be our presentation on lessons learned. So for a quick overview, we did a translation project of Bravely Default Fairies Effect. It is a Japanese mobile game produced by Square Enix.
And to talk about the specific project specifications, we translated the first 10 chapters from Japanese to English of the story on the game website. It was a preliminary project just starting with the first 10 chapters. The source was provided in text file format, and the client took responsibility for importing the translation into their English web page. The deliverables were the translated text file, the translation memory, and the glossary. So we are hoping that successful completion of this project may lead to an order for subsequent chapters. As you can see on this slide, we have the first chapter that was submitted for translation. And you can imagine that this was a very creative project that needed to be very engaging for customers. So consistency and style were very important considerations in this project.
Now we are going to discuss some of the more specific lessons learned, starting with the glossary creation. So programs like AntConc and SegmentAnt were very useful for making the glossary based on term frequency. However, it sometimes would split terms meant to be considered as one term in the glossary into two. We had to add terms to the glossary not just based on frequency, but also on novelty. Although some terms were not frequently used in the source text, they were very specific, such as names and made-up words, and definitely needed to be in the glossary, so they were rendered consistently throughout the translation. The glossary was crucial in this aspect. Some names, such as locations, already had existing translations from previous games, but others we had to decide upon ourselves. For example, we had to decide whether to stick to the standard Japanese romanization of the name Romaku, or adapt to something more familiar to an English-speaking audience, such as Lomac. However, we had to keep in mind that changing existing characters' names would disturb the consumer's engagement and understanding of the plot. We also noticed a few words that should have been added to the glossary only after we had already begun translating. We have learned that moving forward, a client review of terms and individual review of segmented terms is important for ensuring glossary accuracy before the project begins. And this is a screenshot of our working glossary when we were all in one single Google Drive deciding upon how to best move forward with our localized names. And one example in particular that you can see here is the term crystal orthodoxy, which should have been treated as one term in our finalized glossary, but was split into two words by AntConc.
Next, we'll be moving on to the grammar portion of this presentation. Throughout the story, the tenses changed from past to present, seemingly at random. As you can observe from this screenshot of the source text, the first box is in past tense, the second in present, and the third once again in past tense. This was a point of conversation for us as a group, and in the end we decided that we would maintain a faithful translation to the source text and translate the tenses as they appeared in the original Japanese. Another issue with this was that the protagonist of this particular game can be either male or female, so we ended up choosing to use the pronoun they to describe them. These will likely be common topics when working from Japanese to English, especially in games with customizable characters. Next, going into cat tools, we encountered difficulties in exporting translated files and deliverables from Trados properly. One individual TM file was empty, so it had to be redone completely for delivery. We also learned that if the client is not an active user of Trados, the TM should be delivered in the TMX file format, and the TB should be delivered in a spreadsheet format. Another final lesson learned from CAT tools was that file formats will need to be decided ahead of time, and we will need to review our procedures for exporting from Trados as a group.
Another problem we had was with communication. Successful communication is very difficult when trying to orchestrate a project among people with varying schedules, and some decisions had to wait several days before being resolved. And scheduling a meeting proved to be very difficult when everyone has such busy and variable schedules. Moving forward, we would suggest scheduling a set time to meet weekly to discuss and assign project-related tasks and address specific deadlines. Finally, for client review, the client found our file naming strategy very intuitive, so we will sustain this practice and continue doing this. And in the future, when translating more than one language for a client, we should use subfolders to keep separate languages organized. And thus, client review is imperative for keeping consistent glossary terms that align with client brand goals. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.